This book, which I think was presumably supposed to be about the rise of Liz Truss, seems as if it needed a last-minute adjustment and a last-minute change of title to be Rise and Fall. How hectic was that rewrite?
Pretty hectic, I imagine, as much as you guys in Westminster. Effectively, we were doing the first biography of Liz Truss, a politician well known inside the Westminster Village, but perhaps less so outside it. And what really became was the story of her government and the 50-day premiership. So although it was a lot of work towards the end, adding a couple of chapters explaining everything that went wrong after that mini budget, we actually didn't change that much throughout the whole book. And I think in some ways the clues were always there as to what might go wrong when it came to her taking the top job.
I mean, it's quite staggering in some respects, her rise to the top, because by her own admission, she said that she wasn't a great communicator and a great orator, which always seems quite important for a politician. So, I mean, what was the reason for her ascent to the very top?
Well, I mean, she does have, obviously, some certain skills which did her very well in the rise to the top. I think she was someone who, worked hard, was ambitious, wanted to get the best out of each job. You look at her first cabinet job, 2014, DEFRA, and she was running around there, very enthusiastic about increasing food production. It was very much a forerunner of the later Brexit campaigns. We saw the Britain is Great export campaign. So she always had an eye for opportunity, and she worked to build alliances in the various posts with MPs across the House. But I think that what really happened was partly also it was a counteraction to Boris Johnson. There was a sense perhaps that he'd been great at communications, but not particularly delivering on policy. And so I think Liz Truss offered what the members and the MPs in Parliament thought was going to be a much more attractive sound of prospectus. As it transpired, she never got a chance to do most of that. But I think, looking at her career, those 12 years in Parliament, 10 years in ministerial ranks, and also a reaction to the Prime Minister who came before and the circumstances of his downfall are what made her Prime Minister.
Now, James, you say there she had an eye for an opportunity, and it's interesting because Rishi is blamed for undermining Boris Johnson, but it seems from your book that actually Liz Truss had been campaigning for quite a long time to be the Prime Minister.
Well, yes, there's this great conversation where Alistair Jack, who's the Scotland Secretary, does get a call from Kwasi Kwarteng in the book saying, are you a Liz man or a Rishi man? And Alistair Jack replies saying he's a Boris man. And this is about, I think, January, before, obviously, all those later difficulties that brought Boris Johnson down in July. But what really interesting, and I think perhaps the decisive factor in that original race, July-August this year, was the fact that there was a sizable portion of the party, both in the country and in Parliament, who did not want Rishi Sunak because he was seen, rightly or wrongly, as the person who brought him down. He was the one who'd quit the cabinet under Boris Johnson. Liz Truss, on the other hand, didn't. She stayed publicly, at least, outwardly loyal to the very end, was issuing statements which was coming back for the final days of Boris Johnson flying from overseas business. But what is interesting is, I think most senior politicians think they can do the top job, but what we show is that there are already some manoeuvrings before the end for Liz Truss.